This video is dedicated to the memory and brave service of Shireen Abu Akleh, who was killed in Israel 3 months ago in reporting on Jenin refugee camp. She was clearly identified as press, wearing press, the words press clearly identified across her chest. She was shot dead in the face by IDF soldiers. She was a 25-year veteran reporting on that region for Al Jazeera. 25 years, a quarter of a century, she dedicated to sharing information with you, the public, about this situation that's going on in the Middle East. She was Palestinian-American, and she's no longer with us. So Shireen, this entire video is dedicated to you, your brave service, your years of informing the public. This is for you. So before I move on, I just want to make a note that Shireen was actually not the only member of the press shot that day. She was just, she is the one that was murdered. Actually, there was one other person who was shot, and that person, I believe, is okay, or, probably injured, but okay. And, because Shireen was not the only member of the press shot that day, the IDF, the Israeli military, cannot, under any circumstances, take the oops approach. We didn't mean to, like we accidentally shot her, for a few reasons. First of all, the Israeli army is exceptionally well trained. Everyone knows worldwide. They're, probably second to the United States or maybe North Korea. Sorry, Russia. I know you think you're doing great, but you're not really doing that great of a job in the Ukraine anyways with your war. But Israel really does. They're quite advanced when it comes to intelligence, when it comes to their military. That's what their research. That's what Israel's really known for. They're kind of on the cutting edge. Always have been. In those areas. And when it comes to Shireen's murder, an assassination, which I prefer to actually refer to as an assassination, because her face was exceptionally recognizable. That's 25 years of being on the airwaves in the region, reporting on that. So whoever shot her dead, really, they knew what they were doing. They knew who they were murdering. So that kind of classifies as not only homicide, not only murder, but that's kind of like at the assassination level. Anyways, thank you, Shireen, for your service. I'm going to move on with this video. So this video is actually, I asked myself, I'm like, do I want to do I want to discuss the Arab-Israeli conflict, or do I want to discuss the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, right? Now, I'm a rootist. I don't even know if that's actually a real word. It's one I attributed. It probably is. I think I've Googled it before. But basically, it just what it means to me is when I see an issue or a problem, I go to the root of the issue. I address the root of the problem. So if you're looking at the Arab-Israeli conflict, right, which is definitely a conflict, it's definitely an issue still to this day, has been my whole lifetime, right? And I've been alive for 3 plus decades, but 30 plus years, right? So, when it comes to this issue, I personally believe, this is my opinion, I personally believe that at the root of the Arab-Israeli conflict is really the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to start off with a story. I'm actually going to start off with 2 stories. The first one is about a dinner that I had at a family member's house right before I left to move to London, England, to study human rights at UCL, at their School of Public Policy. So when I did that, I'm saying goodbye to everyone, right? So I went to my family member, who actually happens to be a fairly religious Jewish individual. I went to their house for Shabbat dinner Friday night, right? Great food. Anyways, the thing that's most notable about that, other than my aunt's dope salad, because she makes great salads, she even puts mushrooms in it. It's a little different. Anyways, other than the salad, the thing of note, and crunchy things, the thing of note was at the head of the table was this man I'd never seen before, an older Jewish man. And, the subject, obviously, of the dinner was me moving to London to study human rights, right? Which is something to celebrate. In my opinion, anybody, most people I met in that program were really dope individuals. Most people aren't I'm going to spend X amount of thousands of dollars in a whole intensive year focused with a laser focus on human rights. Traditionally, those types of people are not like bad people, right? They care about like other people being able to live a standard of life that they deserve. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I think he asked me what I was going to study. Actually, he did. He asked what I was going to study, and I said human rights, right? And I'm like, human rights, like, hey, right? This guy looks at me so dead serious, like so serious. And he goes, what about Israel? I was in the center of the table, right? He's at the end. I look at him and I'm like, what about it? Silence. No one could say anything because what is your point, sir? I know exactly the point you're making, but no one, no country, no individual, no person is exempt from upholding human rights. And, actually, Israel's supposed to be about human rights, right? Because Israel, the connection really and like the existence and the creation, all that has a lot to do with what happened to the Jewish people in World War II, right? The Holocaust, which, by the way, to any Holocaust deniers watching, was very real. Case in point, I thought I was going to show this maybe later, but I'll show it now. This is me. This is me. Look at me. I'm so happy. I don't really like cleaning. It's not really my thing, but whenever I used to go to my bubbies, I love this little dust thing, right? I used to dust those books, look at all the books. Okay, so you see this photo? This is me as a child. I'm actually wearing, that's a sheen, I think it's called in Hebrew. That's an emblem of the school I went to. It was a Jewish institution. I actually did Jewish education up until the age of 12. And then I switched to an exemplary school called Strathcona Tweedsmuir School in Calgary, Alberta, actually Okotoks, Alberta. And that's when in my opinion, the second half, the second portion of my education really began that day, right? But if you'll notice in this photograph, so this is my grandmother's apartment back in the day, right? I'm little. My bubby was, as I mentioned in other videos, and I'll probably mention many times throughout my career, she was a Holocaust survivor. My great-grandparents died in the gas chambers at Auschwitz. Thankfully, my bubby and her sister survived Auschwitz. They were, as I mentioned before, they were the day it was liberated. Actually, my bubby was looked at by Mengele, and he spared her life, which is wild history for me. Anyways, if you'll note, I'm actually kind of pointing to it with my dust thing that I love so much. I hope you can see that. I'm trying to zoom in there. I hope you see that. That's a swastika. Now, that's not just any swastika. That's a book with a swastika, as you can see in the center of the home. This was actually kind of the main room that we spent a lot of time in as children. Every time I walked into that room, my eyes went bing to the swastika, right? I knew from a very young age that censorship was a bad thing, and let me tell you why. My bubby, who survived the horrors, was a prisoner, was tortured, was starved, was, all the bad things in the world, in the Holocaust. She did not believe in censorship so much, and she believed in understanding things so much, right, in education and books, that she had a copy of Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf, that's Hitler's manifesto, right? Describing the Third Reich, describing his vision for the Aryan race, why the Jews need to be killed. I'm sure there's information on why all the other people who are undesirable supposedly needed to be killed. Anyways, it was right there, right? So that's my history. Anyways, moving on. So my second story is actually, I told you about the Shabbat dinner where the guy asked me, what about Israel, right? And I looked at him like, what's your point? The IDF sweatshirt. Most Jewish kids know that there's three actually. There's three really cool Hebrew shirts or, sweaters that you wear, right? Mostly t-shirts, but this is specifically a sweatshirt. So in t-shirt form, you need the Coca-Cola in Hebrew. I have that. I actually have a picture of me on a horse and that in a backwards snapback. That was cool. Then there's the Maccabea beer, right, in Hebrew. And then there's the IDF sweatshirt. Now, here's actually something that's haunted me for a very long time. My best friend, a dude, he was actually a really smart guy back in the day. He had an IDF sweatshirt. One day I was cold, and he gave it to me, literally just like that. I wanted an IDF sweatshirt my entire life. Not because I wanted to, represent the Israeli army, just because I saw the cooler older kids at summer camp wearing the IDF green sweatshirt, right? It's almost like a puce green. Anyways, it's a different story. But I really liked it. So maybe a moss green. Anyways, Seafoam? No, it's not Seafoam. It's definitely not Seafoam. So, anyways, the IDF emblem is like in the middle. It says like IDF. I might even say it in English and Hebrew. I don't know. But it clearly is the representation and symbolism for the Israeli army, the military. And, most people, when they're 18 in Israel, are forced into the army. I don't know if people around the world really know that. Most people when they turn 18 are like, they have to hold a machine gun, or maybe they're on desk duty, but they have to do army service. The current new prime minister, what is his name? Yair Lapid. He actually, I just read about him really briefly during my research before this. He actually, I thought he would have served more in the army just by looking at him. My first thought was he reminds me of like Reagan, right? Like he looks a little bit like a media personality, which he was. He was a journalist. He actually has you should read his Wikipedia because it's kind of interesting and a little bit different than other Israeli prime ministers, which does give me this much hope, right? A little bit. But he has like sparked beef with Hezbollah, so I'm kind of like, really, bruh? But anyways, so this IDF sweatshirt, right? So it was a symbolism of like, it was just cool. It was just a cool sweatshirt, right? I saw older people wearing it. They were cool. It looked comfy. I knew it represented something to do with Israel. I don't think I really knew it had to do with the army. Either way, I don't know if I really would have understood the magnitude of what that meant at that time. But when I was, how old was I? I was in college. So let's say I was around 19. Wait, that was my last semester because I was organic chem. Like 20-ish, 19. That's when my friend lent me his IDF sweatshirt. And I was running. This is a ridiculous story. I was running one day. I was clearly going too fast because I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was wearing my IDF sweatshirt, so it's like lime green, right? It's lime green, actually. It's lime green. I'm wearing my IDF sweatshirt. A green toque with a beanie on top. Yo, I hope no one took a picture of me this day. And my mother at the time drove a lime green Beetle, Volkswagen Beetle. Something was wrong with my car, and I had an exam. I had an organic chemistry exam, and I was holding a really, really big organic chemistry textbook. There was a step, to get into my home, it was like, you kind of like had to like step down to get out, right? I was in a rush. I was thinking, I gotta get to this exam, right? I step outside looking like a total fool, right? How I'm dressed. But things are about to get way sillier. Looking like a total fool. I step outside and I fall. I roll my right ankle and I fall on the ground with all my weight, backpack, my body, and this fucking textbook. So I fall. I really hurt my ankle. Bad, real bad. But I had an exam to get to, right? So I hop into my mother's green Beetle, lime green hat, lime green dumbass sweatshirt, and I hop into the Beetle and I drive to school. I felt so embarrassed because I'm like, really? Like, I looked at the car, I'm like, I forgot you were green, right? Anyways, I go to school. I want to formally apologize to anyone who saw me in that sweatshirt that day or any other day I may have worn his sweatshirt because, first of all, I'd like to say I did not purchase it. But secondly, I'd like to say even if I had, I did not understand at that stage in my life exactly what that meant, right? I wish I had, but I didn't. Moving along. So anyways, I mentioned I studied human rights at UCL in London, England. Great school, great education, really exemplary. I had a professor named Kristen Backey. She's an intelligent woman. She's actually so intelligent that she speaks kind of like a train on crack. She like I remember the first time I heard her speak at an event. I don't remember what it was on, but she was standing at the the podium or whatever. She was at the microphone, and I literally was like, I could not take notes fast enough. I was like, oh my God, there's so much information I need, and she speaks so fast. Anyway, she ended up being my professor in my conflict resolution course, which was like an elective. And I admired her. I still do to this day, but I will make this point. During the class, I don't know, it was, take note, it was a conflict resolution class about a decade ago, right? So we were talking about something, and then I put my hand up and I said, I didn't always speak out in this class particularly, but I And I definitely didn't speak a lot after this moment because she clearly didn't respect me enough, you know, and I wasn't going to experience this again. I put my hand up and I said something like, is that like something the Arab-Israeli conflict, or is that something like the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, right? One of the most central conflicts of our time, for real. Like, it underlies most things in politics. This woman looks at me and screams at me and says, what does that have to do with anything? Right? And she talks fast. And she yelled it. Like, she raised her voice. And I looked at her and I was like, I could have responded. I could have said a million things, but I was like, I bet. You know, like, I'll let this be your classroom for the moment. But, like, eventually I'm going to say my piece, right? My piece. Anyway, so a little while later after that, she was still my professor at this point. I was studying. I was doing work at the Starbucks near the UCL School of Public Policy in Tavistock Square. And she walked in, and I'm like, oh, shit. You know, I'm like, oh, no. I'm about to get yelled while I'm enjoying my scone and my, what did I drink back then? Skinny vanilla latte. That used to be my drink. So I'm like, oh, no. This is not in the plan for the day. And she actually was very kind to me. She smiled at me. She may even came over and spoken to me briefly, and then she left, right? So that's that. Moving along. Contact theory. One thing I learned from Christine Backey in that conflict resolution course. Contact theory. Essential. Probably the most essential thing to conflict resolution that I learned in that class. But, you know, it stuck with me. And the thing about conflict resolution is, you know, what does conflict mean? It means that there's that minimum of two parties going at it, right? Well, in the Arab-Israeli conflict and the Palestinian conflict, you've actually got a lot of parties going at it. Drink my green tea. Okay, so you've got a lot of parties going at it. You know, you've got the surrounding Arab countries that are trying to defend what is going on in Palestine, right? Which is very, very, very valid. Then you've got Israel trying to, very much so on the offense, but also defense, trying to defend its right to existence, which is, there's also validity to that too. All that being said, contact theory is really how you heal the people. And that's kind of my domain. Like, that's kind of where I'm like, you know, that's what's most important, right? So contact theory basically means that, like, you know, you have them, like, it's exactly as it sounds, really. It's quite simple. You know, you make them in mesh, right? Like, there's cases of, like, post-Rwanda, definitely post-huge conflicts like that, of, like, how do you heal the people, right? You get them to intermingle, right? So, like, while I was prepping for this, I was thinking, like, okay, so, like, what would you do? What would I do what would illustrate contact theory? What's an example? Here's two that I came up with today. Soccer, right? Let's just say you had Palestinian and Israeli children. It doesn't have to just be boys. It's actually probably even better if it's mixed. But you have children playing soccer. But here's the catch. You don't have the Palestinians versus the Israelis. You literally have teams of both. So they have to work together. And they play a game that they enjoy, right? That's one. Another one is painting, right? Imagine, like, same scenario. You've got your Arabs and your Israelis, or you've got your Palestinians specifically and your Israelis, and right? You got your people, and they're painting, but, like, here's the catch. They have to make a painting together. So you literally have, let's say, picture this, two young women, two young females, two little girls, let's say they're 7 years old, and they've each got a paintbrush, and they've each got their assorted, they picked out their colors, right? And the goal is to do something together, to make something beautiful together, whether it be a message about, I'd rather it not be a message about the war, I'd rather it just be something like, they're just making a pretty painting, maybe a landscape or whatever. So, you know, that's the way I see that. Moving along. Birthright. I went on Birthright. I actually have been to Israel twice. I've been lucky enough to be in the region 3 times. Israel twice, Egypt once. With Israel, I went the first time around the age of 10-ish. I went with my stepfather, mother, and my brother, my older brother. We went to Israel for quite some time, like a minimum of 2 weeks. I actually got mugged. Wasn't planning on saying this. I got mugged at the Western Wall. Everyone knows that's like one of the holy sites in the world. I had a neon pink fanny pack, and I was very big into giving to tzedakah, which means charity in Hebrew. I saw a tzedakah box on the right side. The wall is here. I'm on the women's side, right, which is a whole other thing. Like, why they're separated, I don't know. Anyways, there's the tzedakah box is over here, and sitting next to the tzedakah box is this old elderly lady with a sign that basically translates to, like, you can give me money. Now, you have to always understand, when I went to Israel the first time, I was perfectly fluent in Hebrew. Like, I was the person who was navigating things, you know, telling my family, like, speaking to people if we were lost. Like, that was me. So, you know, I'm really excited to be here. I've kind of been waiting a long time to get to this wall. And, you know, it's the holiest site in the world. I've heard about it. Like, it's a thing of legends. Here's what happened to me at the Western Wall. So I've got my pink fanny pack, and it's got all these $2 bills, because back in the day, we had $2 bills in Canada. I had a lot of them that day, because I used to get $2 a week for allowance, right? I earned all this money in my little pouch. So I put a $20 bill, right? Big money, big spender. I put a $20 Canadian bill in the tzedakah box, and then I moved, you know, I started walking towards my mother. All of a sudden, I'm a little girl. I get surrounded by all these women, and they just start pulling money out of my pouch, right? It's literally at my chakra, this chakra right here. It's in the center of my body. I'm a little girl. So I'm getting robbed at the Western Wall, and my mom is stunned. She literally could not speak. The woman was too stunned to speak. I'm looking at my mom like, Ma, like, what you doing? Like, these ladies robbing me, right? She finally finds her backbone when this one old lady turns to my mother and says, give me all your money. My mother goes, that's it, right, and starts screaming. They disperse, right? I'm like shocked. I remember writing the letter. I don't know if we sent it. Plus, my stepfather was full of shit, so he may have said he sent it, but didn't. I actually wrote a letter to, it was either the prime minister or the mayor of Tel Aviv. No, I was in Jerusalem. That was that jurisdiction. I wrote some politician a letter being like, yo, this is unacceptable. Anyways, fast forward to I'm 18, and I go on Birthright. If you're not aware of what Birthright is a trip that Jewish people living in diaspora, which means outside of Israel, are entitled to take. It's their birthright to go to Israel for 10 days. You can even go if you've already been. So I'm like, dope, free trip to Israel, yay me, with my friends. I'm about to tell another story too after. So we go to Israel, you know, it's like a 10-day trip. I believe it's exactly 10 days. Really dope trip, like organized in a great way. I had a great time, great food, amazing schnitzel. You know, people with machine guns everywhere, because that's Israel, you know. This is the point of me talking about Birthright. I will tell the dope story in a second, but this is what was interesting. This is what I wanted to share. I've never shared this. We were having a discussion, right? Like, it was like a moment where we were having a discussion, and we were in this room, this, like, I don't know, like, what do you call them? Anyways, those rooms in hotels where, like, you have meetings. Anyway, so we're having this discussion. We're sitting in, like, this big-ass circle, and all of a sudden, we're all exhausted, true, because we're partying at night, we're seeing holy sites during the day, we're climbing Masada at sunrise, we're having a hell of a time, right? And I was with tons of friends. Like, my best friends were there. My good friends were there. Acquaintances, you know. We went clubbing. Like, we just did our thing, right? We went to the Dead Sea. We did everything you're supposed to do, right? Really well-organized trip to see Israel. Thing is, this part really never sat well with me. We're sitting in the room, and we're in this circle. We're having a discussion. And all of a sudden, people I know and people I don't know, like 4 or 5 of them, burst into tears. Like, they're crying hysterically. Like, this one dude, I knew he was like, you know, big, tall dude, athlete guy. He starts crying. They're all crying. Why are they crying? Because they love Israel that much and they're going to pledge Aliyah. What Aliyah means is like they're going to live in Israel for a period of time, right? They're actually going to extend their flight to stay in Israel. They're not going back to Canada. And I'm watching this and I'm like, this is a little bizarre. The energy in the room is a little weird. It's very intense. But I'm thinking, and I'm smart enough not to say out loud, I'm like, this is brainwashing. It's absolutely brainwashing. That's how I felt. Anyways, the next story I'm going to share about that trip before I move on is I had a friend. So before I went to Israel, I did something really smart. I'm actually trained in, did a lot of taekwondo. I did a karate. I mean, no offense to karate, but like we all know, like, hi, yeah, like it's not that big of a deal. I did a lot of taekwondo. That's a big deal. I did a lot of taekwondo. Like once a week, I did taekwondo for years. And I'm pretty good, right? I love fighting. I still go to fighting gyms to this day. I don't like fighting. Like, I don't aggress on people because that's like one of the rules you learn in taekwondo is like, it's clear, it's purely for self-defense. You can only use this stuff in defense of yourself, right? Or others, right? But it's only for self-defense. So before I went to Israel, I was like, you know what? Before I go, I kind of want to learn how they fight. So I did a couple lessons of Krav Maga. I learned basically how to take someone down. That was the most effective thing I learned in Krav Maga. So I did a couple lessons with a friend. We hooked up with a trainer. We went to TriStar in Montreal. And I learned a little bit of Krav Maga. And I'm a natural fighter. Like, I'm a natural athlete and gymnast in certain ways. So, like, you know, I picked it up really well and I was good. So we're at a beach somewhere outside of, I think it was Tel Aviv. Yeah, I think it was Tel Aviv, I'm pretty sure. And this guy that I've known my entire life, goofy dude, tall dude, athlete as well, but like tall, goofy dude. He actually broke my camera in Greece. I was pissed when he did that. He dropped my camera, my brand new digital camera. Anyways, it's another story. But in this story, this guy was like, we were sitting on this like picnic table, like drinking beer. It's like sunset type time. And he's like, we're talking, and I must have mentioned something about the Krav Maga lessons I took. I'm like, yo, like, I can take a dude down. I know this because I took the instructor down, right? He allowed me to. He probably could have kicked my ass, but, like, he showed me precisely how to take someone down. It's like, right? So I'm like, I know that I'm skilled, right? So I say this, and my silly friend goes, you can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean I can't do that? He's like, you can't take me down. He's over 6 feet. I'm like, bro, I can take you down. He's like, prove it. I'm like, cool, where, when? He's like, right now on the sand. I'm like, seriously? Like, you're about to be embarrassed, dog. He's like, I'm ready, right? We go to the sand, all my friends and like, you know, some people join, literally a circle around us. 1, 2, 3, he's on the ground, right? Literally, like, I got him, like, on his back, right? In stunned, like, how did she do this? I just told you, and you allowed me to embarrass you in this way, and now I'm embarrassing you on YouTube. Anyways, moving along. That was a great story. I just had to share that. So, right. I knew some IDF soldiers personally. I actually met one that I corresponded with for quite some time over email for years after that. She was a great girl. Woman, I should say, because once you hold a machine gun, I think you go from girl to woman pretty quick. Once you're forced to hold a machine gun, don't forget that, people. So I knew some IDF soldiers, and they told me they were pretty. They didn't use the word traumatized, but they definitely expressed displeasure with the things that they had to do while they were in the Israeli army, and I never really forgot that. They were like genuine friends of mine. I had known them through someone very close to me. Sorry about the beeping. That happens sometimes. I actually don't even know where it comes from. Anyways, so, yeah, they expressed to me that they were not happy about what they had to do, but you literally, like, you can only be, like, the new Prime Minister, Yair Lapid, he was exempt because he had an asthma attack during basic training, right? So then he started his media career after that. But like most people, I hate to say it like this, aren't as lucky to have an asthma attack. They have to carry out the wishes of the IDF, you know, military top generals and shit. And truth be told, just because they're holding a machine gun doesn't mean that they want to be. I just wanted to say that. Anyways, moving along, peace, right? What's the main point of this conversation? Really, I mean, it's about peace. You can't expect, in no realm can you expect that the Palestinians, the people living in Gaza Strip, the people living in the West Bank, you cannot expect logically for them to ever agree to be governed by the Israeli government. You can't. You just cannot. For peace, you cannot. That's kind of like saying to me, like, the people who tortured you and force medicated you to go out of your mind, and the people who like confined you to institutions, they're now in charge of you for the rest of your life. You can't do that. It's not going to work out, and I'll tell you why. There's no trust. Zero. Zip. None. Nada. Like, not a smidgen. Not 1%, not 2%, not 0.01%. There's none. So this guy, Yair Lapid, which I actually read in his Wikipedia page, supposedly, he has intentions of resuming peace talks. And I think I may have even seen on that page, right? I don't know if I was hallucinating, but I think I may have even seen something about a two-state solution or like self-governance, right? So that's interesting, right? That's noteworthy. We may have a chance, like I said at the beginning, of a prime minister in charge, who might actually have peace in mind. Netanyahu's out. Although he is releasing a memoir in November, I will not be pre-ordering that, and I'm sure it's going to be highly slanted, but whatever, like, do you. Anyways, so, I just want everyone to know that, like, Israel governing the Palestinian people is not an option. It's just not. Love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor. Really something we need to keep in mind. I've had some shitty neighbors over the years. I'm a rapper. Most rappers know, no matter what your skin color is, most rappers know that, or have experienced at a certain point in their life, a racist neighbor, right? Somebody who just can't stand them because they rap, right? Whether they hear them through the wall or not, or they just have the knowledge that they rap. They take every opportunity in that instance to, especially in my city, in Montreal, noise complaints they're not little knocks on the door like, excuse me, do you mind keeping it down? Like, my kids are trying to sleep, or like, I'm trying to have dinner, or like, I'm studying. That's not how it goes down in my city. It's like, oh shit, I spilled tea. I'll deal with that after. Damn it. Anyways, that's the point. It's a whole ruckus, right? Damn it. I keep spilling shit. So, anyways, it's a loud knock on the door and two officers standing there being like, we heard there was rapping in this apartment. That's happened to me multiple times. The last time it happened to me was years ago, and I made a point, because in that apartment I was pissed. I was like, that's funny. I'm like, so today I have a noise complaint? I'm like, why didn't anyone call you when I was screaming for my life when my ex almost took it? Right? Like, why wasn't any help called because if the walls are that thin and you could hear me on that day where I'm rapping, I think it was J. Cole that day actually, but like when I'm like rapping along to like whatever, if that's problematic, why isn't me screaming at the top of my lungs for my life a reason to call? But I personally, despite my racist neighbors, I personally believe in love thy neighbor. I especially believe in love thy neighbor. I pray one day it's the motto in the Middle East, right? I know it's a big ask. I get it. I understand all sides. A little bit less Israeli military side, especially, they got, the Israeli government right now has a schizophrenic, I believe he's 21 years old. I don't recall his name. A young boy, 21's young. He's diagnosed schizophrenic. They've had him in solitary confinement for over a year. Bro, I've been in a version, or it's pretty much solitary what they put me in, and they did it for more than 6 weeks on one occasion, although that wasn't the only time I was put in there. But like, that's a different type of torture. Like, most people wouldn't last a day keeping their minds sane in solitary. And they probably wouldn't be able to recover it after that. I really hope they release that young man soon, and I hope that he gets the help that he needs, because he will have a lot of healing to do. I hope he gets the resources, the support. That story breaks my heart. But what you're supposed to do, right, what we're taught, what I was taught, even in my Jewish school, in kindergarten, is the golden rule. Now, the golden rule says, drum roll please, where's my other pen? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Treat others the way you want to be treated. That's what the golden rule means. I learned that when I was 6. They're not doing that there. They're actually doing the exact opposite in a very cruel, inhumane, war crime type of way. Human rights, when that dude asked me at the table, what about Israel? I wasn't going in because of Israel. That's not why I was going to do that. First of all, my intention was to learn about children's rights, which is what I did, right? I specialized in it. I'm pretty dope when it comes to children's rights. But my personal statement to get into that school, the very first line, which my roommate at the time can attest to because I read it out loud so many times, was, she said, I could recite your personal statement back to you. That was funny. I am a product of genocide. That's my burden, right? Like, that's what I carry with me. Now, what does that mean? I'm a product of genocide. That's interesting. That's an interesting way to start an essay. My grandmother that I mentioned survived the Holocaust, had been previously married, she was married young, to a Hungarian soldier who was also Jewish. Very early on in Hitler's reign, and when he, went into Czechoslovakia, which is where my bubby's from, he was taken away and put in a labor camp. He got very ill, I believe, and he died. I'll have to fact check that with her testimony, but he died, right? She only saw him like once or maybe twice and corresponded with letters after he was taken away. That's my bubby's first, that's heartbreak. That was obviously someone she loved. My bubby was a very intelligent, highly intelligent woman. She had a lot of books. If he hadn't died, right, if she had still been married to that dude, technically speaking, me the way I am right now, I wouldn't be here. There's a few reasons for that. Firstly, I mean, that's a whole spiritual conversation I'm not going to get into, but like mainly, I'm here. Why am I here? Because she married my grandfather. Who's my grandfather? He was a Canadian soldier fighting in World War II, fighting for her honor in a way, which is actually so beautiful. Their love story is so nice. My grandfather was dope. I have a picture. There's a picture of him with a gun after the war pointed at Hitler, a painting of Hitler, and he's just like, That's my grandpa. Anyways, shout out to Grandpa in heaven, dancing with Bubby. Anyways, so, right, she was married to this dude before, right? But after the war, she met my grandfather in Prague. And, he had originally been from Romania, but he emigrated to Canada when he was 7. So, I'm a product of genocide. I can't erase that. I can't. Like, that's me. I exist partially because of genocide, right? Like, if he hadn't have been killed, my bubby wouldn't have married my grandpa, and I wouldn't be here in Canada now, right? I wouldn't have had this life in this country where human rights, while, yes, mine were really badly trampled on and basically obliterated for a time, comparatively speaking, which unfortunately is kind of like how we have to assess human rights in this world at this time, comparatively speaking, Canada's like on the scale of like great, like we're not Icelandic, we're not Finnish, like, and they've got their issues too. We're not Norway, we're not one of those countries. We're Canada. We've got a really good PR for human rights, but like cat's been out of the bag since those like indigenous, the graves, the mass graves, unmarked graves of the indigenous children, thousands of bodies, right? That happened in our territory. We can't deny that. So love thy neighbor, means something to me. It really does. And I pray that one day it's the slogan for the Middle East. That's my vision, right? I pray also that I have a very heavy hand in peace talks. I pray that the next time I go to the region is on official business. And I pray that by that point I'm fluent in Arabic and different dialects as well. I pray that my Hebrew is pristine to the point where I could write a book in Hebrew and just might. Because really it wouldn't take me that long. I still can read it perfectly, pretty much. With the exception of maybe the vowels and the symbols. But like, I practice sometimes. I definitely speak Hebrew a little bit. Let me try. Let's see. Tinok, that means baby. Ani lo medaber ivrit, that means I don't speak Hebrew. Lo means no. Ken means yes. Bracha means blessing, and it's also my name. What up? Anyways, so yeah, I just really do hope that love thy neighbor is where this goes. I'm about to conclude this on 2 points. My next point is Free Palestine. Hashtag Free Palestine, which is sometimes the greatest act of bravery you can even do. Even posting it and deleting it is something, right? So shout out to you who did that, because I love that you did. But Free Palestine, what I mean by that, like if you ever hear me say Free Palestine, I'm not saying abolish Israel. I'm not saying, take away jurisdiction from the holy sites. I'm not saying like, Israel shouldn't exist. That's not what I'm saying, right? That might be what other people are saying. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it shouldn't exist how it is right now, right? Like we're in the year 2022. It's been ages since the Universal Declaration of Human Rights came into existence, right? Which is basically just the charter that outlines everyone's rights globally. For me, Free Palestine means free the Palestinians. They have a right to self-governance. They have a right to, not have to, because they're so grief-stricken, parade. This was, I think, 2 weeks ago. I just watched it, but I kind of forget. They parading like a 5-year-old little girl's body through the streets. A whole bunch of Arab men screaming, crying, hollering, because like what else are you supposed to do, right? And then the grandfather gets on the TV. He has a camera in front of him. Every time a grandfather speaks on behalf of a grandchild that has died, it's always strong, right? It's always strong. But this grandfather, he said, she was looking forward to kindergarten. She said something like, and what? Because her father, she asked for some books and a backpack. I'm assuming she may have died on her way to getting the backpack. I actually don't know the full story. But for me, as someone who has been tortured, confined to institutions based on a lie, with no one listening to me about who I really am and what I really am about, with zero evidence too, forced medicated out of my mind, in and out for years. For me, what Free Palestine really means is restore human rights to the region, give the Palestinian people their God-given right as human beings to have authority over themselves, and protect the sanctity of what it actually means to be a human, right? Because there's nothing humane about what happens from Israel to Gaza and the West Bank to Palestine, right? So I'm going to end on this. As a young child in the Jewish education system, we used to donate a lot of money, like I did, like my money, my allowance money, to trees, right? We used to, the thing was, it was like, you donate X amount of dollars, right? Not that much, but like something. You donate money, and then a tree gets planted in Israel, right? Well, I have a very stern comment to make. I don't want to call it a warning, but it kind of is one. If I find out that any one of those shekels, any one of my monies that were supposed to go to planting trees to provide oxygen and make a beautiful Israel situation, if I find out that any cent of my money went to a piece of shrapnel on any Palestinian, you'll hear from me. And that's where I'm going to end. Thank you for paying attention. I hope you see the intention of why I recorded this. I'm only about peace really at any given time, but especially on this subject matter. That's all I want. All I want out of this situation is peace. I know it's, these things clearly don't happen overnight, but as a video I just watched online pointed out, this battle actually hasn't been going, people often say it's been going on for centuries, you know, and sure, there might be some merits to that, but this specific issue is actually only like a century old. It's not actually as old as people think. And, you know, just because our ancestors or the generation before us, or, you know, whoever claims, you know, this is a necessary war to fight, we're actually not designed for war as people. Fear is strong, but I kind of disagree with Tupac on like one point. It's a conversation, it's worth a conversation, but like, you know, Pac says fear is stronger than love. I have known the opposite to be true, actually, and I'm going to leave it on that. So thank you for paying attention. Please share this with anyone you'd like, politician, civilian, anyone, you know. Please share this with anyone you think this might help. If I shared something, you know, you think is interesting, please let me know, and have a great day ahead. This is Arielle London saying peace, literally.